I think it all ties into the elusive intangible, which is why I start with the drawing the boats on the surface. Words are just because there's a lot of people that care so much about the semantics rather than what the words are. The words aren't the end all be all. So for example, like when I was a grad student and I was pitching a thesis project for a documentary, there was this one professor taught documentary, and because he's teaching this area of study, the terminology really matters. And he wanted to know, well, is this cinema verite? Is this blah, 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 blah? And I just said, that's just jargon. It doesn't, you just want to be able to categorize this rather than talk about, what's really important. What are we trying to accomplish here and why? That often happens with language. And so what interests me, so when we were just discussing all the things in the workplace, the strange patterns, coups or whatever, those are the things they're nonverbal. No one is going to say we're staging a coup because we don't like so-and-so, but their behavior and their decisions and their actions communicate that. And that's the thing. Those are the things that I think those are the patterns that are interesting and most useful. But people often don't talk about those patterns in a way as though logic can allow you to navigate those patterns. And they occur every day in our lives in so many different forms. So taking critical thinking and logic and being able to apply it to things that are more actually relevant than just the boats on the surface.
Interesting. Okay, so it's taking the rational into, I guess, not entirely the realm of the emotional, but what is considered that.
Well, we can't discount. I mean, and again, I've been thinking about this stuff nonstop for like the last 5 months. And when I first started, and it's absolutely essential to be able to parse out the subjective from the objective. And because if someone just says, well, I don't like Donald Trump because I don't like his personality, or he's just a meanie. Well, you can't really contend with that logically very deeply. You can, but at the same time, we can't discount subjectivity completely, because there are things that cannot be articulated logically, whether it's a belief in God or what God means, or the fact that there's certain things like instinct, where if I'm talking to a coworker, my boss is asking me to do something and something doesn't feel right, I'm not quite sure what it is, but that part of us, that thing we call our gut, and it often is right. How? And we can't articulate it. So we can't discount that. And I call that the elusive intangible.
Okay.
Or why a certain movie resonates, another one doesn't. Why is Heath Ledger a better Joker than blah, blah, blah? It's art. That's what art is. And it's existed thousands of years for that reason. Art is the exploration of the elusive intangible, that which cannot be articulated. They're trying to figure out how to articulate it in other forms. So if you can merge the two, then you can actually get something done.
Well, do you believe then that art is objective in any sense, or that it's all subjective, or somewhere in between?
It's in between. It's the merging of the two.
Can you explain that more? Because I actually have a friend who I've had huge debates with over this, because I think I've taken the idea that there is objective art, and he takes the complete opposite. But this is a new idea to me, that it's both.
There are some, Rings of Power or a Star Wars, one of the recent Star Wars movies. There are some movies that I think I can logically, objectively articulate reasons why they're just poorly done, because they broke this rule of storytelling, or they completely they ignored the reality of archetypes or something along those lines. They upended the hero's journey. Like they took Luke Skywalker and made him a bitter old man who threw away his lightsaber and expect us to care. Well, it goes against the very fabric of reality on a deep level. Something like, I don't know, this is an interesting question, so I'm just kind of like exploring it off the top of my head, but it would be something like that, where, okay, there's some things we can logically dig into, but then again, I can't explain why Heath Ledger could do what he did. There's some things I could logically say about that, but there's some things I can't. So I think it's both.
Yeah, I guess it does get tricky there, because you could state something that's more of an opinion, and then that's where people would say, well, that's subjective. And it's like, so, but I think you're right. It's like, I don't think anyone would deny that Heath Ledger put in like what you were talking about, the elusive intangible, something about that performance resonates so much more than even the cartoony ones we love from before him.
Yeah.
Would you say Joaquin Phoenix is touching on that?
I think he's a good actor. I think he's dancing with it, exploring it. I prefer Heath Ledger. I just think there's something elusive and intangible about Heath Ledger that isn't there for me in Joaquin Phoenix, and that's a subjective statement.
So then how does it come back to the objective then? How would you weigh them? Or can you? Is it even worth having that conversation?
You could take a survey. Who was the best Joker? What do you think? Who do you think's going to win? Is that data? Well, the audience, in the same way, when I said I can't go just because of a viral video, that doesn't mean I can, because the audience knows if you didn't earn it or not. But there's no way for me to logically explain why. But could we say that the audience is a data point? The audience doesn't lie, almost.
Yeah, well, that's hard. Okay. So there was this post, since it's Father's Day. Shout out to the fathers. There was this post on one of those big meme pages that apparently all week they'd been doing this, like, what do you call them in sports, where they put people against each other and you eventually get to the best, but you let everyone vote, like it's a bracket. Yeah. And they'd done that with fathers in movies, and all of the actually good fathers got kicked out in the first round. And it came down to like Tony Stark and Peter Griffin or something ridiculous. And the top four were all bad. It was like, I was like, okay, I was surprised that they had Liam Neeson from Taken in there, and he didn't win at all. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure at the end of that one, it just came down to popularity.
But what was the frame of the contest? What were they?
Who was the greatest dad from a movie or TV show?
That's pretty broad, though. So
yeah,
I get your point. But if we were,
Walter White was in there, and I'm like, he destroyed his family.
You're asking a specific question, kind of, and people are going to almost be ironic, and I think it's different rather than a movie star is a movie star because the audience perceives them as a movie star. So if the audience perceives Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., which they do, I think, is that true? Is that objectively true? Because he's only a movie star because people perceive him as that.
I guess, we'd have to define our terms there, because I guess movie star, there's the classic movie star, like where we don't know anything about them and they don't do interviews, and there's not many of them left. And I would put, personally, I think Dennis Quaid is one of those people for me. And he just proved it because he went on a bunch of podcasts for this new movie he's promoting. And he said the exact same talking points on every single podcast.
I hate that.
I hate it too, but it does prove he's from that era where it's like, oh, I do my junkets. I do my, I say what I want to say about the movie, and any other question he just kind of ignores.
Yeah, I should say I hate that, because
it has its purpose, but I'd prefer open conversation.
He's cool. I like him.
Yeah.
I saw some of his interviews. That was cool. But because it is interesting question to think about, though, because like the only reason that actor has value, the only value they have is what the audience gives them.
True.
They're making that money because the audience will reflect. That's reality. The audience will pay that or they won't. The movies will succeed or they won't. That's a real obvious data point, but we can't articulate it.
And I think that also leads to a lot of, I don't know if you'd call it postmodern per se, but like the arguments people have now about like, why aren't people getting paid the same? Or they're trying to find a objective reason for why it's like, oh, it's because of sex. It's like, I would say that there's a reason Robert Downey Jr. got paid so much to be Iron Man.
But you can point to the income the movie made, and that offsets the budget. There's data there. So yeah, I agree. I see what you mean, but I don't think acknowledging that there's subjective, there are things that can't be articulated. I don't think that is an argument for postmodernism.